Hey everyone, welcome to Trucking Sustainably. I'm your host, Jason Morgan, and we have Charging Infrastructure Part 2. We're talking charging as a service here. Now, again, in our previous episode, we talked about turnkey solutions, how you can work with one point of contact to really get your arms around bringing charging infrastructure to those fleets that want to put electric trucks on the road. Here we're talking charging as a service. This is kind of a different road to go down. And we're talking with Henrik Holland, the global head of mobility for Prologis Mobility, on how it all works, what people can expect, and what's different in this avenue for charging infrastructure. So here we go. Let's talk with Henrik. Henrik, thanks for taking the time. Great to connect with you here to talk more about charging opportunities in the commercial vehicle world.
Thanks for having me, Jason. Excited to talk to you today.
So let's lay some groundwork here with a phrase that I'm hearing more and more these days, charging as a service. I kind of understand what that is in theory, but what's the reality? Can you kind of explain it to me and kind of give me a real world use case there?
Absolutely, Jason. I think it's a really, really good question because charging as a service as a term gets thrown around a lot, and it means kind of different things to different people. So I'll explain to you a little bit what we mean when we talk about charging as a service. And to put things into context a little bit, for those listeners, viewers that don't know Prologis, we're the world's largest industrial real estate company. Okay. And you might think it's a little weird, speaking to somebody at a real estate company talking about EV charging, but there's a lot of logic to it. So my background is in energy, 2 decades, and I am heading up the Prologis Mobility unit, which is really kind of an EV charging services business within Prologis. We serve our customers within our own Prologis real estate footprint, but increasingly also outside of the Prologis buildings so that we can help customers with their transition to EVs across their full portfolio. And indeed, we prefer to do that with a charging as a service business model. So what that really means for us is simplicity. And what it means for our customers is simplicity. So when we started this 2 years ago, we started Prologis Mobility with a fundamental hypothesis, with the fundamental belief that in order for fleet operators to transition to EV, in order for the EV revolution to truly be a revolution and to get to scale, things need to be extremely simple and, where possible, need to kind of fit within the existing ways that fleet operators and owners make decisions around fueling. So charging as a service for us means offering not infrastructure per se, not software. It means offering the use of the infrastructure on a per-use basis. Mm-hmm. To make it even simpler, in our case, you pay per kilowatt hour. That's the simplest way that we offer our product. So when you do a project with us, well, you're not really even doing a project with us. You're buying kilowatt hours from us at a Prologis location, at a non-Prologis location, or at a dedicated charging hub that we're developing. You pay for your fuel just like you would pay for diesel. Now, of course, there are the devil's in the details. Of course, there are fundamental differences in terms of fueling diesel versus EV. Right. There's dwell times to charge. But as it comes to thinking through, hey, I'm a fleet operator. I already have to deal with, I now have to buy an electric truck. It's a different use pattern. Very different from diesel. That's already complex enough. How do I think about fueling? Oh, I can just get it on a fuel unit basis, which is now not a gallon of diesel, but it's a kilowatt hour. So that's charging as a service for us. Make it really simple, make it usage based.
Right. Well, okay. So one of the big challenges then is just availability. And I love the map behind you because I think this sets up my next question there of how do you prioritize those locations and regions for developing the infrastructure availability that fleets would need to bring that, like as you said, the revolution of EV to the market? How do you look at the map and figure out where to go with it?
And Jason, there's 2 things that we do. So first of all, we're very customer-led in where we deploy. So as it comes to offering charging as a service at a warehouse, We work very closely with our customers to understand where they're deploying vehicles. So they'll come to us and say, "Hey, we bought 200 heavy duty trucks to do electric drayage in Southern California." These are facilities, some of those might be Prologis warehouses, some might not be. We then look at, okay, well, what are the drive patterns, the duty cycles of those vehicles? Where can we then most optimally, based on where they go, where can we most optimally install this infrastructure? We're finding that generally the most cost-effective solution is to install charging infrastructure at a warehouse that's already leased by one of our customers, because you don't have additional land costs of a hub. So we take a very customer-focused approach in that. That's the first thing we look at. Then we look at power availability. Like there's a lot being said right now about the challenges of getting sites electrified, and that is a true challenge. I fundamentally believe that the customer requirement comes first, and then we figure out the power equation, not the other way around, because you're going to end up putting charging infrastructure in places that are not really optimal from a logistics perspective. Right. So we take that customer-focused approach on where to install infrastructure. We own and operate that. Our customers use it. I'd say in terms of regions, if you're thinking about the map, that's actually a map of California behind me. Most of our projects are still in California. We now have projects in Illinois and New Jersey. So the economics, of course, really are an important component of like, where does this infrastructure go? California, with the low carbon fuel standard credit system, with the incentives available, still is the most economically viable state to deploy. But fortunately, we're seeing some expansion beyond that. And I'd say the second thing that we do, I mentioned dedicated charging hubs already. Mm-hmm. So apart from installing infrastructure at warehouses that are basically dedicated behind the fence deployments, we are developing charging hubs that are not tied to a specific warehouse where multiple customers can charge. And the way that we identify those locations is to really look at traffic patterns, look at zero emissions drayage, for example, huge drive in California right now. So we look at the traffic patterns around the ports of LA, Long Beach, Oakland, to determine what the most optimal charging location is for those vehicles. And we look at then our own real estate asset base and what would be the most optimal place to charge without the least deviation from those major traffic routes. Again, the answer there is very much California, where we're looking to develop. But we now also have hub development in New Jersey, Illinois, and Texas. Georgia is coming soon as well. So fortunately, I think for the industry, I think we're seeing some expansion beyond California.
Yeah, because those projects can take a little while, quite a while actually, to get off the ground sometimes. And going back to one of your earlier comments too, that I think really resonates is one, finding the environment to be able to put those locations in, and locations that are suitable for commercial trucks. Because trying to charge a Class 8 commercial truck is definitely different than trying to charge just a four-wheel car, right? I mean, those are different space requirements, different size requirements, different equipment requirements. A lot there. Yeah. One of the things that I find interesting that you offer that I really haven't heard too much about is a temporary power solution. What is that? How does that differ from charging as a service? And I mean, is that a bridge to get us to where we're going here?
Yeah, absolutely. So oftentimes when we engage customers, they will already have purchased vehicles. I think we're, as an industry, getting a little better at engaging with the required stakeholders, infrastructure providers, vehicle OEMs, dealerships, and customers earlier on in that process. But today we're facing a lot of requests. Hey, could you get me up and running in 3 months or 6 months? Because that's when I'm taking delivery of vehicles. And that's a real issue as it comes to energizing sites. We've energized sites at warehouses with multiple megawatts of power within, I'd say, as little as 8 months, but that's a pretty fast process. That's generally not the norm. Right. So we're trying to meet our customers where they are and where they need to be in terms of their requirements. So we've developed a suite, I think I can call it now, of on-demand power products that range from small. So that would be a single high power charger. Think about a 350 kilowatt dual port charger on a trailer with a gas turbine on it that we can fuel with renewable natural gas. So you still get the environmental benefits that we can drop in, permits, depending on the permit situation, et cetera. We can drop that in within a week, within 2 weeks. We can hook that up to pipeline gas. We can hook it up to, we can truck in gas. So we can get that going really quick. Then we have a medium size and a larger size. A larger size is again turbine based, gas turbine based, or more innovative linear generation based. Linear generation, not to go, it sounds really kind of Back to the Future-esque, flux capacitor-esque, but what it really awesome. is a novel technology that combusts hydrogen or natural gas at low temperature. So you have almost no NOx emissions, no NOx. So the air quality management districts like it. You can fuel that with renewable natural gas as well, but you can drop those in slightly higher power requirements. And we've deployed these very successfully over the past 16 months. We have multiple trailers running at customer locations. You don't get the full power of a full project yet, but customers can actually start utilizing their vehicles. And we've deployed the large size as well at a site in Chicago, Illinois, where we have a megawatt of generation capacity running, powering the permanent infrastructure. Whilst it's probably going to take, we energized that system 6 weeks ago. It's probably going to take another 6 months for the utility to ramp up. So we can get customers going super quick. We still do that to a degree on a service basis. With a recent customer deployment, we have actually planned in to the contract that temporary power system. So there's even no change in how we're contracting with that customer. So again, simplicity is really key for us. It's one contract. From that perspective, it doesn't matter to the customer if there's a temporary system there or the full system. Power output changes a little bit, but the overall simple contracting structure does not. So that's really exciting. We have deployed those systems, or are in the process of deploying those systems in conjunction with energy storage as well, which just allows us to buffer energy a bit more to offer more instantaneous capacity and kind of get even more trucks running earlier on in the project cycle.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's really interesting. I think, if you look at that kind of, clearly you don't really want to buy electric trucks if you don't have an infrastructure plan already kind of going, because that's a key component, right? But given how aggressive California is and some of the clean fleet rulings, right, and fleet managers are feeling some pressure to really start turning over their fleet. And to your point, waiting a year and a half, 2 years for the infrastructure can be a little difficult to get rolling there. The temporary power is interesting. How do you see this balance as you roll this out, right? How do you make sure that temporary power is just that, just temporary, and not just the way I'm doing business now in EV, right? What's that as that evolves and EV demand grows even further?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think it's no secret and no mystery that there's going to have to be a tremendous amount of investment in transmission and distribution infrastructure in the United States over the next decades, in order to support the electrification of vehicles, but also of heating in buildings as we introduce heat pumps, et cetera. So definitely that is going to have to happen. I do think that in the energy system as a whole, we're going to see an ongoing transition to a more distributed energy ecosystem. So that means rooftop solar. It does mean, I think, more linear generation with green hydrogen, which we think will come online at cost-effective levels 2026, probably more 2027 and beyond. $3 a kilogram of green hydrogen. So I think that's going to really help alleviate some of the congestion on the grid, we see really cost-effective opportunities to deploy on-site generation in many regions in the United States, especially in the higher power cost regions. Um, and I think, partnerships with utilities, private, private companies who generate their own power are going to become extremely important to not even just accelerate, but to make, we see the projection curves of EV. I think in order to support those, we're going to have to see more of this distributed energy infrastructure, which in some cases does mean, I think, Jason, that that there is not per se a transition from temp to permanent in terms of utility interconnection, but that on projects we see the deployment of some on-site generation that could be solar and storage too, and then we see a utility service come in to maybe complement that to some degree, but not completely replace the generation capacity that's already been there. Right. So a lot needs to happen in that space. And that's not a new trend. This trend towards a more decentralized energy system has been going on for, 10, 15 years. And I think EV is going to be a catalyst to kind of driving that further. What's really important is the net zero component of this. So when I talk about gas gen, that immediately leads to a conversation of, hey, well, what does that mean for emissions? I mentioned renewable natural gas. That market is quickly evolving. And if you look at supply outlooks, there's going to be a very robust supply of renewable natural gas to fuel these projects. So we always think about our solutions with that net zero outlook in mind. We as a company have a commitment to net zero by 2040. But we do think that the decentralized solutions like generation, solar, storage are going to, have a really important role to play, and are not just things that are going to go away once a service is in place, but really play more in complement to each other.
Okay, so and there's a lot going on there, right? And what I'm interested in too is your all view. It's a very kind of macro view of charging infrastructure need, right? From a fleet point of view or a customer point of view, I worry about my application and my trucks, right? You guys kind of take a step back and look at the big picture there. So with all those things going on, and we talked about how you look for places to develop projects and make this easy for customers, what does that mean to you as you focus in on the next, let's say, 5 years down the road? Where do you put your focus to make sure you can deliver for your customers there?
Yeah, awesome question. I'm really, really excited about the future that's ahead of us. I think we're at the very, very early days and starting point of something that's going to be so transformative for our industry, but also for society as a whole, right? So we're going to have cleaner transportation. It's going to be more connected, more autonomous, and therefore like a lot more efficient. And that is good from a fuel perspective, from an emissions perspective, but I think also will translate to cost efficiencies in the overall logistics supply chain, lower costs for consumers in moving goods around. So I think it's not just about like getting an EV. I think it's about a lot of different technology threads coming together, from battery technology to autonomous to AI. So I think how we're increasingly thinking about things already today is, I mentioned that we're very customer focused in our projects, right? So we have a customer that says, hey, I want to do a project, do it at my warehouse, behind the fence, dedicated for 22 heavy duty vehicles. Every truck has its own stall. It's private. We're building out those projects, and as we've been building these over the past 2 years, and we're putting more dots on the map, we're starting to see a network emerge. The early, image of what a more comprehensive network looks like. We have 5,000 facilities across the U.S., and we think by 2030. We're going to have about a gigawatt of charging capacity installed. About 20 to 30% of those locations will have some form of EV charging. And what I think is going to happen, that leveraging all those technologies that I just mentioned, AI to support optimization of routes, better planning, etc. I think that network is going to become more open, and we're going to see, we have a customer that has a dedicated charging project. There's no reason why third-party shippers visiting that same site would also not charge at that location. Right? So today, we're really focused on getting the basics right, just making sure our customers have high reliability, they can charge when they need to, the power is there, the cost is right. I think over time, these networks are going to become more open, and that means that the utilization is going to increase, and that's going to translate to lower cost for our customers and consumers. So what we're doing today to enable that, well, we're building out the projects, we're building out these dedicated charging hubs, and we're introducing software that our customers can use. So as part of our charging as a service, you don't just get, to fuel at the pump, but you get a software system that's telematics integrated that shows you where your trucks are, shows state of charge, you can plant routes in it. It really is a service, not just about the kilowatt hour, but about the we want to offer our customers, as part of our service, the ability to optimize how they use these vehicles. Right. And that software layer is the foundation over time to say, hey, those chargers aren't being used, 18 hours out of a 24-hour window. So let's figure out a way to add more charging from third parties, for example, into that project. That translates to savings for our customers. So the long-term vision 2030, I think, is a much more open network, a lot more sharing of capacity between other networks as well. I mean, we have, this is a very much, I think, stage of the market where there's co-opetition, but there will be multiple networks that will be more integrated. We're talking to our partners about that too. But the foundational thing that we're doing today is we're introducing software that enables our customers to manage their charging and for us to get better insight into utilization so that we can start thinking about, okay, how do we add more vehicles into that existing mix, drive up utilization and lower cost.
Right, for sure. Well, I mean, I look forward to seeing how this all comes into focus here. Clearly, a lot of work to be done. You're out there doing it. I appreciate you taking the time to just kind of give us a view of what it looks like right now and what it's going to look like in the future. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Jason. It was a pleasure talking to you today. Thank you for having me.
All right, there you go. Finally, an answer to what charging as a service is, and a really good answer there, because it shows that in this whole effort to get electric trucks out on the road, charging is a huge component of that, and really the biggest challenging component with that, with electric trucks like the Volvo electric VNR being available, right? You got to get charging there. Yes, you can put infrastructure in at your location. Charging as a service is another option. So it's kind of fun to have these different options, be able to look at what fits your business, your fleet, and your application. As always, thanks a ton for joining us. We'll see you next time on Trucking Sustainably.